Hi, it's me, Bird or Hadass, whatever you want to call me really. I usually don't make videos with facecam, especially me being like the full screen focus. That's something I've not done before. But this is a special video, and despite my camera quality being okay, I'm using my phone instead of the one I used in my previous app video, which was my, bad COVID-19 lockdown camera that everyone had. It was important for me to add some charismatic flair to this sort of video essay. So, Super Auto Pets is a cute, silly auto battler which you shop for pets, and then you watch those pets being smacked against your opponents, each pet having a different ability. In February of 2024, the Unicorn Pack released, filled with mythological and mystical beasts, as opposed to the usual real-world animals that Super Auto Pets had. There were a few exceptions, like the dragon in Turtle Pack and Puppy Pack, and a Velociraptor, which was featherless, making it not accurate. They later added a real Velociraptor to make up for the fact that the one without feathers is not very real. So, Unicorn Pack came out. I recognized a decent amount of the pets there, including the unicorn, which I'm sure all of you know what a unicorn is, but I was wondering about some of them. I didn't really know what they are, where they came from. And so this video idea came to me, and I hope you all enjoy it. A list of all the sources I used will be found in the sources doc in the description. If you find errors within the list, please let me know, I will fix it. In addition, no generative AI was used in the making of this video. This is important for me to point out because I directly oppose the use of AI for its environmental harm and theft of art, visual or not, specifically for these kinds of projects. Now then, let's begin with tier 1 of the base Unicorn Pack. Starting off pretty weird with question mark, or just Bush as people often refer to it. I'm not sure about its specific origin. In the Super Auto Pets wiki, it says that the file name for it is leafling, which only means a small leaf in English literature, or characters from the Pikmin games. Now throughout this video, I will mention Dungeons & Dragons once in a while, because I am well versed in that game's lore and creatures. For those that don't know, Dungeons & Dragons, or D&D for short, is a fantasy game that you play with a group of people, guided by a person called a Dungeon Master or DM. D&D will be more directly relevant to some of the later pets that will come up, but I mention it now because the bush reminds me of an awakened shrub from D&D, a small bush or potted plant that came to life through magic. Moving on to the Barghest. In North English mythology, the Barghest was believed to be a spooky goblin dog thing that you saw when you were close to your death, and it appeared only at night. The in-game ability of making the opposite pets spooked fits the Barghest very well. The Baku, one of my favorite pets gameplay-wise, comes from Japanese folklore. It has the body of a bear, the head of an elephant, the eyes of a rhino, the tail of an ox, and the legs of a tiger. Super Auto Pet's simple art style can't really include every single detail of that, so it focused on the head and the tail aspects more than anything. I think they did a great job designing it. The Baku were mythical good beings that resided mainly in forests. They fed off bad dreams of people, and in so kept them safe and healthy. This translates to the Baku removing ailments and giving extra health to pets every even turn, which is nighttime in the sap world. The Tsuchinoko also comes from Japanese mythology, translating to Hammer Child. It was described as a short, stumpy snake. Its head resembled that of a hammer or mallet. Their diet varied from bugs and frogs to even smaller mammals. Despite being awkwardly shaped, they were known to roll around and jump. This is why they're one of the pets that can jump forward in battle. According to the SAP wiki, the Mermal is a parody of a Murloc from the Warcraft world. It's even referenced as Murloc in the game's files. The Murlocs in Warcraft are beloved amphibian creatures that look like this and sound like this. I absolutely love making their sounds, like they came from deep oceans and usually aren't very intelligent. The Mermal's entrance sound also sounds similar to the iconic Murloc sounds, furthering that connection. The Alchemides is a creature unique to SAP, and was most likely inspired by the ancient Greek figure of Archimedes, mixing his name with alchemy, since it's a golden beetle carrying a potion flask. two things that are associated with alchemy. The pen gobble's origin isn't very clear. In the wiki's trivia section, the most likely origin is that of the porg from Star Wars. I can slightly see the resemblance. They look like a porg and mixed in some anglerfish traits. The bunyip comes from Aboriginal Australian folklore. It is a monster that lives in swamps and lagoons and feeds off humans. Its descriptions vary, but usually it was similar to a hippo or manatee with a round head and long neck. The seaweed or muddy water dripping off the bunyip's sap art reflects its watery habitat. Sneaky Egg doesn't seem to have a clear mythological or pop culture origin. In my opinion, it was designed based on the cartoon trope of chicks and other birds that walk while most of their body is still inside their egg, similar to that of the hatching chick from Sap. While there isn't a story about a cuddle toad, toads in general have been related and linked to folklore about witchcraft and the supernatural, either being used as part of medicine or being the familiar of a witch. I believe the odd name is just to separate it from a regular, real toad and give it some air of mystery. The ghost kitten depicts the ghost of a cat. The only information I found about ghost cats that isn't just people talking about a ghost of their cat remaining behind in the house is this article talking about people seeing large felines such as cougars or pumas where there aren't really any. This phenomenon is referred to as a ghost cat sighting. Perhaps the SAP devs looked at this phenomenon and made a literal ghost kitten to reference it. The Mothman is an iconic monster from American mythology, specifically West Virginia, dating back to the 1960s. Sightings of a large humanoid creature with red eyes flying through the night. I'm interested about the devs' decision to have the Mothman's eyes in SAP be the normal blank black eyes, instead of the glowing red eyes described in quote-unquote sightings of Mothman. Perhaps they tried the red eyes and it just didn't fit with the rest of the pets? The Frostwolf is most likely inspired by Fenrir, the doom-bringing wolf from Norse mythology. He was born in the land of ice to a giantess and Loki. Not that Loki. There we go. I find Norse mythology fascinating, so I'm especially excited to mention it here and in the discussion of future pets and even foods. Shout out to RevGT, since the drop bear is an Australian legend of a koala-like predator that literally drops on top of its prey from the trees. This is another pet that can jump in battle, and it definitely checks out. In the 1930s, a pair of American hunters that had dabbled in taxidermy glued deer antlers onto a jackrabbit's head and made up the tale of the jackalope, a rabbit with big pair of antlers. In medieval Europe, the concept of a wyver, or later wyvern, not wyvern, came to be. A lesser dragon with wings and only 2 legs, not as strong as dragons, but still fearsome creatures to humans. The wyvern was commonly used as a symbol for war banners and noble households. The wyvern is still relevant to today's culture, just as creatures within fantasy stories and games, instead of as symbols of power. The Ogopogo is a Canadian legend, propped up by people seeing large humps of a serpent body swimming across Lake Okanagan. The Ogopogo art in-game has it reside in a bathtub because it was never seen outside of water. Thank you devs for caring for the health of this aquatic creature. The Thunderbird has extensive history with Native American mythology. It's said to be a great beast of vast intelligence and morality, and also is an explanation for strong weather phenomena such as thunderstorms. This deity was described across many different Native American cultures, so there are variations, but generally speaking, it was as I described it to my knowledge. Originally, gargoyles were just fancy water drains, usually in the shape of a lion. The word gargoyle was just a term in architecture. However, the term became used to describe Gothic statues depicting grotesque, hunched, bird-like creatures. Usually they are represented as these creatures in media, including in Super Auto Pets. I think most people know what Bigfoot is, and some might even believe in its existence. Bigfoot, also known as Sasquatch, is said to be a large ape-like bipedal creature that exists in northwestern America. Somehow, every person who sighted it had extremely low-quality cameras, probably due to censorship by the woke media or something. I can't really find any references to skeleton dogs online, other than this random low-poly dog from Sonic Adventure 2. Perhaps it's just a spooky dog for the sake of having a dog in the pack, as most other packs include at least one dog, though there is the bad dog. So I wonder. The mandrake, as opposed to most pets in this pack, is a real plant, and its name comes from how its roots resemble the limbs of a human. In superstition, it's said that its roots are potent for concoction and medicine. In addition, in medieval times, it was said, if you pull a mandrake out of the ground, it will shriek so horribly that it will cause you to die or go mad. This is why it daces opposing pets in SAP. The fur-bearing trout is another American hoax, similar to the jackalope. These fish were said to have fur to protect them from the cold northern waters. The sightings of these fish were most likely fish infected by fur-like mold that can easily be mistaken for actual hair by common folk back in the 1700s, and even up to the 1900s. A mana hound in Warcraft's lore is a vicious demon that devours one's magical energy. This is likely the inspiration for Sap's mana hound, though in Sap it's much cuter and is blue to match the color associated with mana in the game. I'll get to talking about mana itself in the food section later. The Cali Greyhound, like the wyvern, was used in medieval heraldry, or symbols for various houses or factions. Like some other pets I've already discussed, it is an amalgamation of different animals. Usually it was depicted with the head of a wildcat, body of a deer, forelegs of an eagle, and the hind legs of an ox. This is also simplified in the game's design, focusing on the head and forelegs as the most detailed. One of the main reasons for making this video is the existence of the brain cramp. The brain cramp is inspired by D&D's iconic and horrible intellect devourers. They are walking brains that serve mind flayers, intelligent tentacle creatures that feed on brains and control you like puppets. Just like in SAP, they are known to be a lethal threat to any low-level adventure in D&D. The Tatzelwurm, meaning paw worms or paw dragons in German, is a legend about a snake with strong arms and the head of a cat that lives in the Alps mountain region. The Tatzelwurm became a symbol of mystery and wonder for these areas. The Ouroboros comes from both ancient Greek and Egyptian mythology. The legend of a snake that endlessly eats itself in a circle. Also, the title of the group of protagonists in Xenoblade 3. Love that game. The Ouroboros represents the unity of all things and the endless nature of the cycle of creation and destruction. I genuinely love this shit. Lucky Cat is an uncommon joker that scales its X-Molt when you trigger your lucky cards. This joker especially works with Okay, so actually the Lucky Cat comes from Japanese folklore and various tales of cats bringing fortune or even saving lives. These tales spawned a tradition of sculpting cats raising a paw, often holding coins. The Lucky Cat in SAP is holding up its right paw, which attracts wealth and good luck. That's why it gives you gold. The idea of a griffin originated from the Middle East and the Mediterranean at large. A beast with the body of a lion and the head of a bird, often having large wings. This beast spread its way into both Western Asian and Greek mythologies. It also commonly features in fantasy media, such as D&D. Heading into the tier 4 of the base pack, I highly recommend that if any of these origins especially interest you, go look up more detailed information. For things like the Thunderbird and Ouroboros, there is so much information on the internet that you can look for. The Kraken is a giant sea monster originating from Scandinavian and Norwegian lore. A book about Danish natural life from 1752 claims it's round, flat, and full of arms, which is what it looks like in SAP. Also, the phrase "release the Kraken" became big in pop culture after an unintentionally funny dramatic delivery of that phrase in the 1981 movie The Clash of the Titans. The Visitor is actually just a knockoff of the Xenomorph from the Alien franchise. Even in the game's files are just called Xenomorph. You know, the chest-bursting alien thing? Makes sense, it gives the icky ailment. I wouldn't want that happening to me. The titular unicorn. The earliest depiction of the horned horse is in prehistoric Mesopotamian art, which was where Iraq resides nowadays. It was also referenced in Chinese and Indian myths. Then it was part of ancient Greek mythology, and was part of older translations of the Bible from the word re'em, which actually is closer to an ox. In many fantasy worlds such as D&D, the unicorn is a magical creature and its horn is innately magical and powerful. Strangely enough, the tiger bug isn't mythical, unlike every other pet in this pack. The tiger beetle is an agile green insect that lunges at its prey. I didn't know this until researching for this video. Ah, the Minotaur, a staple of Greek mythology. The story tells of a monster that had the body of a man and the head of a bull, residing within a labyrinth, a large maze. The Minotaur was killed by Theseus and Ariadne, ending the ritual of sacrificing people by sending them into the labyrinth. Said to be the builders of some of Greece's ancient cities, the Cyclops were described as one-eyed giants. In SAP, the Cyclops is depicted as green and with a horn, because otherwise it would just look like a big human with one eye, which isn't that visually interesting. The Chimera also originated from Greek mythology, 3 in a row. It's a beast that has parts of a lion, a goat, and a dragon. Most of its depictions, however, were that of a lion with a goat's head in the middle and the tail that's also a snake, which is exactly how it's presented in SAP, and why it spawns these 3 different animals. The roc mostly appeared in Arabic Middle Eastern mythology, and it's just a very, very big bird. It was said to hunt large animals like elephants for food. A lot of depictions of the roc include colorful red and blue feathers, which is why in SAP it's just as colorful. The Worm of Sand is a spoof of the sandworm from the Dune books and movies. These worms can grow up to be 400 meters long in adulthood, or roughly a quarter of a mile. Big worms. In SAP they took the Worm of Sand literally and drew a worm that's made out of sand. An abomination isn't any concrete creature that exists in mythology. There are many abhorrent creatures from stories as old as the Bible, which the word abomination comes from. It simply means something you view as disgusting. The in-game file for the abomination sprite is called Shoggoth, which is why we know that the design in SAP is based on the Lovecraftian horror of Shoggoth. Just a much cuter depiction of it. The red dragon in SAP is directly based on dragons in fantasy such as D&D. While dragons were talked about in mythology from much older times, the visual design is clearly inspired by those fantastical dragons that adventurers go to slay. Other examples include Smaug from The Hobbit or the Red Dragon from Super Auto Pets, a silly and cute auto-battler. In D&D, Dungeons & Dragons, dragons live to be thousands of years old, and the older they are, the stronger they get. I imagine that leveling up a red dragon in SAP directly ages it, making it inflict the crisp ailment on more opposing pets. While the vampire bat is a real type of bat that exists in our world, in SAP they took the name more literally. Based on the vampires of legends, it has oversized fangs and uses its large wings as a cloak. It also sucks the health from the pets it hits with its ability in Super Auto Pets, specifically hitting those who are afflicted with ailments. Loveland is a real city in Ohio, and in the 1950s people started reporting of a weird, tall humanoid frog person thing. It was named the Loveland Frogman. Supposedly this was a full-on species that lives in Loveland's adjacent river, not just a one-of-a-kind cryptid like the Mothman. This hoax became the mascot of Loveland, and I think it's a bit silly. The Salmon of Knowledge comes from Irish mythology, in which any who would eat the salmon would gain its knowledge, the knowledge of the world. SAP's visual design of the salmon mimics that of old depictions of the Salmon of Knowledge. We get the Pichu from Chinese mythology. To this day it's a symbol of wealth, protection, and power. It's usually depicted as fearsome with a lion-like body, a dragon's head, and a single antler that curves backwards. In SAP, the Pichu gives you money, and has pretty strong base stats in the current version of the game. Kitsune is another creature from Japanese myths, an intelligent and powerful fox that can use magic to shapeshift into anything. There are many different types, but the Kitsune sprite in SAP is based on the 9-tailed Kitsune, with white fur and red markings. Yes, like in Naruto. Shout out to Grounded, because the Loch Ness Monster, also known as Nessie, is a well-known myth from Scotland. Supposedly, there is a big, powerful monster residing within the large lake of Loch Ness, and sometimes you can see its head poke out of the water. Nessie became a very profitable mascot for the Loch Ness area, and for Scotland as a whole. I even have somewhere in my house a coin bank with a cute cartoon Nessie on it. In SAP, Nessie spawns a Nessie token, which is just a boat that kinda looks like Nessie. While there is European mythology about black dogs, a bad dog is not a pre-existing legend. From my understanding, the bad dog in SAP is a mythological, non-existent pet because all dogs are good dogs. You can even give the bad dog holy water to transform it into a good dog. The werewolf is a concept that has appeared in many, many different mythologies. The earliest recorded tales of them were from ancient Mesopotamia. The basic concept is that a human transforms into a wolf or a wolf-like creature, often only at night or specifically during a full moon. The werewolf in SAP gains a lot of stats when it's an even turn, which is nighttime. An amalgamation is just something that is made of two or more things that were combined. For example, a spork is an amalgamation of a spoon and a fork. The amalgamation in sap looks to be combinations of a turkey and or duck, a pair of hooves, and maybe the head of a dragon. It's weird. I like it. The manticore is described as having the body of a lion, the tail of a scorpion, and the head of a monstrous-looking man. Sap's art of the manticore includes wings, which, while not always a part of its design in original Greek sources, manticores depicted in fantasy worlds, like that of D&D, usually have wings, making them a larger threat for the story. The phoenix was mythologized both in ancient Egypt and in ancient Greece. It's a large bird of fire associated with the worship of the sun. The phoenix is said to turn into ashes as its end approaches, then a new phoenix is reborn from those ashes. This is why the phoenix in sap creates a young phoenix when it dies, after burning those around it in a large fiery explosion. From the ancient Mexican religions, we have the Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent deity. From my understanding, its role in different religions and tribes was pretty dynamic, and there's a lot of information about it. I again implore you to read further about it, as well as any other pets that especially interest you from this list. The Sap Wiki, surprisingly, has a very detailed explanation about the team spirit. Paraphrasing from the wiki, the team spirit isn't based on any pre-existing myth. It's a personification, pedification, of the term team spirit, which means to have the motivation to work in a group. There isn't an apparent reason that it's birds, but I like birds, so I'm not complaining. Odin, the Allfather, is an iconic god from Norse mythology. He had a faithful steed, Sleipnir. Sleipnir was an 8-legged horse that is known for overwhelming strength and speed. I love Norse mythology. Shout out to my favorite band, The Mechanisms. Might do a video essay on them at some point. Many different mythologies and legends have talked about giant sea creatures, such as the sea serpent, usually depicted as a very big snake-like monster of bluish color. There's a lot of stuff about sea serpents. The Abominable Snowman, also known as the Yeti, is a myth about a big ape-like monster living in the Himalayas. The monster is fully covered in white fur and has big claws. The underworld Greek mythology has an iconic ruler, Hades. And Hades had an adorable 3-headed donkey that stood watch over the entrance to the underworld. The pupper was called Cerberus. When you buy Cerberus in Sap, it barks 3 times, 1 for each head. I remember this specifically thanks to Troubadour Sap Jeopardy. Stay true! Greek mythology is once again relevant, because now we're talking about the Hydra. A very big snake monster, with many heads, one of which was immortal. If you were to chop off a head, 2 would sprout in its place. The Hydra in Sap is inspired by this fact, with it spawning more heads the more attack it has. I assume the higher attack it has, it represents more initial heads that are cut off and then respawn. In the Old Testament of the Bible, there is a description of an animal species of behemoth. In translation, the word became behemoth. Interestingly, the original word was the plural version of behemah, but in translation it's thought of just a single behemoth. The beast itself was described as a very strong grass-eating animal, with bronze bones and iron limbs. The Bible probably just described like a large hippo. Wait, we're done with pets? Well, not really. We still have some custom exclusives to go through. Interestingly enough, the basilisk and cockatrice are actually from the same legend, are the same except for their visual description. A basilisk is a giant snake-like monster, and a cockatrice is an amalgamation of a dragon, a serpent, and a cockerel. They both have the same scary abilities, the most iconic one being their gaze, which would turn any who directly look in a basilisk's or cockatrice's eyes into stone. If you get them to look at their own reflection, they'd be affected themselves and be defeated. Now you know why they turn pets into stone in Sap. The Nightcrawler is based on a cryptid from California, first sighted through security cameras in 2007, naturally in extremely low resolution. They look like vaguely pants-shaped white blobs. It's weird. The Daycrawler that the Nightcrawler summons in Sap seems to be a silly joke. The Nightcrawler's entrance sound is that of a zipper, implying that the Daycrawler is just in a Nightcrawler suit. From both Greek and Egyptian mythology, the Sphinx is a monster with the body of a lion and the head of a human. In the most famous legend, it terrorized the town and killed its people one by one until one of them could answer its riddle correctly. Again, this just makes me think of The Mechanisms, my favorite band. I gotta make a video about them. The chupacabra is a popular myth from Latin America, because it is a monster that feeds on goats, sheep, and other domestic animals' blood. This is why in SAP it gives your pets health for knocking out an opposing pet, similar to how the vampire bat gains health for hitting pets with its ability. The golden beetle, or golden tortoise beetle, is an actual beetle that exists, named after its shell that looks like it's made of gold. In many cultures, the golden beetle represents many things, including wealth and prosperity. This next pet had to have its name changed due to copyright reasons. The Worf, previously the Warg, was named after the Wargs in The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. These Wargs are similar to wolves, just bigger and more ferocious. They're used by orcs in the story as mounts. I always wondered why SAP couldn't use the name Warg when D&D also has them, with the same source of inspiration. But while researching for this video, I found out that D&D has wargs with an O, not an A, making it legally distinct. The most recent addition to the Unicorn Pack, the Amphisbaena. This beast from Greek mythology translates to walking both ways, which fits considering it's a snake that has a head on both sides of its body. This is why it saps, it buffs a different stat each turn, representing the turns that the heads taking control of the buffing. Another real animal, the Galactus Atlanticus, is known as Blue Dragon. When it was added, I was very confused because blue dragons, I know, in fantasy, don't look remotely close to that, and usually have lightning powers like they do in D&D. Then I looked it up and found out it was just an existing animal. My guess is it's in the Unicorn Pack, simply because it's named after a dragon, a creature from all across mythologies. Chinese guardian lions, or just food dogs, as they're known in the Western world, are symbols of protection in Chinese Buddhist religion, often depicted in large statues protecting temples or small statuettes for individual houses. Another name that was changed due to legal conflicts with The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings is the tree, previously Tree Ent. The Ents in J.R.R. Tolkien's stories were a sentient race of trees that protected forests. This is another case where I wasn't sure why it's changed, because apparently in D&D, the tree people are called Treants, so it's legally distinct from Ents. This cutie is the slime. Since D&D has introduced these acidic blobs of squish, slimes have become a staple of the fantasy genre. Games, movies, anime, everything fantasy really. Usually depicted as a small threat for low-power fighters to earn XP from. But there are slimes that are much more intimidating. A common ability of oozes and slimes is they split when they are attacked, which is why in SAP the more they grow, the more small slimes they spawn. The Deer Lord was originally named the Wendigo, after its inspiration. The Wendigo is a mythical monster from native North American legends. After concerns about the possible appropriation of Native American culture, the devs promptly changed the name to what I find much better suited for this game. A pun on the phrase Deer Lord, this pet is the Lord of all Deers, which doesn't really tread on the mythology of Native Americans, and also has the perfect vibe for SAP in my opinion. Keep in mind my opinion, and it doesn't matter, on the discussions of cultural appropriation for this instance, but I will always listen to those that have been, and are, affected by this. The Axe Handle Hound is a myth from Wisconsin and Minnesota of the US. A thin dog with a large, axe-shaped head. Supposedly it feeds on axe handles left by lumberjacks at camps or in the wild. It's very specific. One of my favorite pets to use in costumes in general, the Caladrius. This majestic bird comes from Roman mythology, in which it would cure those that are sick, and also let them know roughly if they have long to live. I wonder why it doesn't cure ailments and instead only interacts with mana. Fairies have been described in so many ways from all over the world. The typical fairy we would usually think of is a tiny humanoid magical person with colorful wings. SAP's design is more insectoid, having a cute spherical body and 4 legs. To rootle is to act like a pig, for example to dig things with one snout. Rootling is just a version of that verb. For example, the pig is rootling for mushrooms. In SAP, a rootling is a pig made of roots, combining the actual meaning of the word with the word root. The Egyptian god of the dead is called Anubis, after the Super Auto Pet's pet Anubis. Wait, no, it's the other way around. Anubis in mythology is represented either by a jackal or a man with the head of a jackal. Since SAP doesn't have humans as pets, it went with the former. Triggering the abilities of faint pets is referencing the god of the dead aspect of Anubis. The old mouse is seemingly just a normal mouse that's older in age, but its ability justifies its existence within the unicorn pack. All of the nostalgic toys it gives are references to various fairy tales. These will be covered in the toys section at the end of the video. Pegasus was the name of a mythical winged horse from Greek mythology. I always thought it was a species of these winged horses and not the name of a single one. I thought this because in so much fiction works, from D&D to My Little Pony, a Pegasus is the type of horse that has wings, not a specific character. Thor, the Norse god, had a pair of pet goats. These goats were called Tangrisnir and Tagnoster, spelt like this. Sap made the spelling a bit simpler to read for an English-speaking audience. The hammer toy they spawn when the two are combined is a direct reference to Mjolnir, Thor's mighty hammer. Not from Marvel. D&D time. What's a chest with eyes, teeth, and an overly long tongue doing in the game with turtles and fish? Well, a mimic from Dungeons & Dragons is a creature that disguises itself as furniture. The most iconic and common depiction is that of a treasure chest disguise, luring in greedy adventurers and devouring them for nutrition. But mimics can disguise as anything, like chairs, tables, or even hold doors. The reason the mimic gives golden sap is that often the mimic will have actual gold and other treasure left over from previously eaten adventurers. The Ahuizotl is a creature from Aztec mythology. It was said to be a dog-like creature with black waterproof fur and had a hand at the end of its tail. Sap's art of the Ahuizotl shows the tail hand petting itself, which is just adorable. Certified good dog. From South American mythos, we have the Boitata. This huge fire snake will attack anyone who damages the forest and or animals. Based. In the Guarani language, apologies for my pronunciation, Boitata translates to Serpent of Fire. The Kappa is a Japanese legend of a small, but very strong aquatic turtle people. They have a dish of water on top of their heads, which gives them their strength. Their favorite food is human remains and cucumbers. Also Japanese, the Nurikabe is an invisible creature that looks like a white wall. They will randomly appear on roads at night and block anyone from continuing on that road. No matter how far you go to the sides, it will just extend itself to block you. Poseidon, the Greek god of the sea, had a chariot. That chariot was being pulled by a water horse called Hippocampus. Because naturally, horses are the animals who pull carriages, so slap on a fishtail and you're good to go in water. Like the Pegasus, the Hippocampus's depiction in media made it into a species of water horses and not a special horse with a name. The Namazu, or Onamazu, is a big catfish from Japanese legends. This special type of catfish was the Japanese answer to why earthquakes occur. The Onamazu would get so excited and thrash about, shaking the earth above, which was Japan. I'm not sure why Sap has them stand on 2 feet and have a more human posture, when the usual depiction is that of just a catfish, but big. The myth of the Lasca originated from the Caribbean Sea, around the Bahamas. This was reportedly an amalgamation between a shark and an octopus. This was probably just people seeing octopi or scuttles with pointed heads. The small one will be covered along with its big brother in the toy section. I'm Jewish, and in the Hebrew language, the word Leviathan, or Leviathan, simply means whale. In Jewish mythology, however, the Leviathan is a big, ancient sea creature serpent thing, and this was inspired by Mesopotamian mythology, before the Bible was even written. Apparently, in the Jewish Bible, it represents the enemies of Israel. While this refers to the Jewish nation of old and not the apartheid state of the now, I want to say, Free Palestine. A favorite mythos of mine, the questing beast, comes from Arthurian legend. You know, King Arthur and stuff. It was said to be a large beast with the body of a leopard, the head of a snake, the legs and tail of a lion, and the hooves of a hart or deer. The likely explanation for this is that the medieval people saw a giraffe and didn't know what the hell they were looking at. In Arthurian legend, the Pelennor family hunts it, and it is slain eventually by a group of knights. Mechanisms. We already talked about the cockatrice, so next up is the Jersey Devil. The legends say that in the woods of New Jersey, there lurks a spooky devil. The myth likely sprouted from the Leeds family back in the 1600s in an attempt to piss off some local printing establishment by including some various things from German mysticism in their prints. Winter Spirit is a pet without a specific origin as far as I can tell. It's called Forest Spirit in the game's files, and it seems to have the body and antlers of a deer and the head of an owl. In all the mythologies of the world, there have been countless spirits that embody winter, and even more that relate to forests in general. In Inuit mythology, the Uklut is a sea creature that can change its shape between an orca and a wolf. There's a wide variety of depictions of the Uklut, but in general it's strong and fast, ferocious and predatory, and clever and elusive. A lot of different mythologies and cultures had their own explanation for why eclipses happen. In the case of the Philippines, it was believed that during lunar eclipses, a monstrous dragon was attempting to devour the moon. This dragon was called the Bakunawa. This is why in SAP, the art depicts it nomming on a small moon. Or it's just that big in SAP, though it does take the same amount of space as an ant, so that would be a bit silly. We are done with the pets. Next up, all the food. Mana, as thought of by indigenous people to the Pacific Ocean, is a supernatural force that can be found in anything. It can be good or evil, beneficial or harmful, it can be anything. Nowadays, mana is a very common term in fantasy media, as well as countless video games with magic systems that require mana to cast spells. A mana potion is a common item to be found in these games, instantly restoring mana to the user so they can continue casting spells. Potions like that usually have different sizes or ranks, giving more mana the bigger they are, hence the large mana potion. Mana is a key mechanic in Unicorn Pack, with many of its pets utilizing this magical essence to use their ability. Health potions, or sometimes healing potions, are adjacent to the mana potions I talked about, a consumable one-time item that instantly restores a certain amount of health or hit points, so you're further away from dying in a game. The idea of healing potions came from many different practices of traditional medicine. One such example that I found is that Crusader paladins mixed aloe vera with wine to make a potion that heals one's wounds quicker. An elixir of Jerusalem, because of course they include their obsession over the Holy Land in everything they do. The wall chicken has a much more silly story behind it. In the 1986 game Castlevania, the player can break certain walls to find a chicken leg that can heal them. This sparked memes in the 2000s about eating chickens found in walls, and how that it would probably not be a good idea. Hence, giving you an ailment in SAP. Fairies have many connections with dust or powder, as I found in a wonderful article that I ascribed to this section in the sources doc. Fairy dust in Tinkerbell gives you the ability to fly, which most likely was the main inspiration for SAP's fairy dust, since it gives the pet the ability to jump while getting mana. From what I can find, there is no faint bread in mythology or folklore. What I did find is an interesting explanation of how bread in Greek mythology symbolized the cycle of life and death. Maybe the idea of faint bread you sacrifice to gain a boon when the holder of the bread dies, comes from this aspect of Greek mythology. The idea of the gingerbread man is credited to Queen Elizabeth I, because she asked her chefs to make gingerbread in the shape of important visitors. Gingerbread features in many stories, such as the house from Hansel and Gretel or the living gingerbread man in Shrek, Shrek 2, Shrek the Third, Shrek the Halls, Shrek Forever After, Scared Shrekless, Donkey's Christmas Shrektacular, Swamp Talk, and Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. The art of Sap's gingerbread man closely resembles that of the living gingerbread man from Shrek, Shrek 2, Shrek. So many different cultures have thought about a fountain of youth, a place where a person can be restored to a healthy youthfulness and delay the prospect of death for a long while. In Sap, the water of youth, water from the fountain of youth, rejuvenates a pet and wholly transforms it into an entirely new pet. Literally. It also adds a perk, as the fountain can bring strength and or constitution. The story of Goldilocks follows the titular Goldilocks as she breaks into the home of 3 bears and fucks around, sits on their chairs, sleeps in their beds, and of course, eats their porridge. One is too hot, one is too cold, and the final one is just right. It's a just right porridge. Like in the hit game Super Autopets' Unicorn Pack's Tier 3 food, the just right porridge. Ambrosia in Greek mythology is a natural substance found on Mount Olympus, the place where the gods live. It's both the food and drink of the gods, as well as sort of a body cream that keeps their body healthy and youthful. It's a 3-in-1. It's commonly known as the nectar of the gods. Both the Eat Me Cake and the Drink Me Liquid are references to Alice's adventure in Wonderland. The cake labeled with Eat Me makes Alice grow to a huge size, so extra attack fits well in Sap. The potion labeled with Drink Me does the opposite, making her shrink down to less than a foot tall. I suppose it would be harder to hit a tiny target, so health kinda makes sense. Also, the mechanism. Chocolate is a food made from roasted and ground cocoa beans that can be a liquid, solid, or paste, either by itself or to flavor other foods. Magic beans and the golden egg are both linked to the story of Jack and the Beanstalk, yet another mechanisms reference. In the story, Jack gets some magic beans that grow into a giant beanstalk that reaches up to the sky, allowing Jack to steal some stuff from a couple giants. One of the things he steals is a golden egg, and that was on his second time up there. Waiting a turn to get the golden egg is so flavorful. Another entry that isn't from mythology, the Konpeito, is a real-life candy and is extremely popular in Japan. It looks exactly like it, how it does in Sap, a spiky star-shaped candy made from almost exclusively sugar. In Chinese mythology, the Peach of Immortality is a peach that grows in heaven every few thousand years. It's said that it stays ripe for basically eternity. There's 3 variants, each taking longer to grow than the last. One gives you wisdom and a longer lifespan, another gives you the ability to fly, and the last one gives you eternal life. The Horn of Plenty, or cornucopia, is another food that originates from Greek mythology. A young Zeus broke off a goat's horn, and his then caretaker filled it with fruits and herbs for Zeus to eat. Zeus's incredible power or whatever made it so that the horn will never run out of food. Since it contains such an endless variety, you never know what you're gonna pull out of the cornucopia in Sap. The idea of the love potion existed in ancient Greece, where they thought that drinking the sap of a certain plant increased the passion within women. Actual sap, not Super Auto Pets. There was also an Indian herbal blend that was said to help win over mates, and later, Islamic cultures in the Middle East and Africa also adapted these love brews. The Easter egg is a tradition in Christian religion, painting eggs to celebrate the holiday of Easter. The egg symbolizes the rebirth of Jesus, and the decorating is just part of the joy of that holiday. Why a rabbit? Well, German folklore had a rabbit called the Ostenhase, which would lay colorful eggs for children to find. This was adapted into the common Christian tradition many people know of today. In Sap, the rabbit that spawns from the Easter egg is called Monty and has a wooden bat. This is a reference to Monty Python's Rabbit of Carbonog, a vicious and monstrous rabbit. The last food we have left is the Yggdrasil fruit. Not Yggdrasil, Rev. The Yggdrasil from Norse mythology is the world tree that connects all the 9 realms that the universe is composed of. In Sap, the fruit of Yggdrasil spawns both the Tangrisnir and the Tagnostr, Thor's goats. All we have left now are the 22 toys in the unicorn pack. The Cuddle Toad gives one of 3 witch toys, a witch broom, a magic wand, or a crystal ball, all things that are related to witchcraft. A broom is something a witch can fly on, a crystal ball can be used to view a big variety of things within it, and a magic wand is something people that are capable of magic can channel their spells through. The Sphinx has the ability to spawn 2 adventurous toys, the magic lamp and the magic carpet. In many stories, a magic lamp usually contains a magical genie that grants wishes, and a magic carpet can be mounted on and used to fly across the sky. The Griffin has a unique treasure map toy, which leads to a treasure chest toy. This is the classic trope of the treasure map that has an X marking where the supposed treasure is. The fairy can give one of 2 wondrous toys, the Nutcracker and the Tinderbox. The Nutcracker refers to a ballet play by the same name, and features a fairy within it, the Sugar Plum Fairy. I don't know why it summons a salmon of knowledge though. The Tinderbox is a fairy tale that has 3 dogs in it, all with various sizes of eyes. This is why it summons a giant eyes dog. The Old Mouse has 8 different nostalgic toys it can randomly generate, each referencing a different fairy tale. The Candelabra is a reference to the Beauty and the Beast's living candelabra. Glass Shoes references Cinderella and the prince's quest to find the lady which the glass shoe fits. The Golden Harp is a reference to Jack and the Beanstalk, in which the giant had a magical harp that can talk. Lock of Hair references the story of Rapunzel, the girl with impossibly long hair. Both Magic Mirror and Pickaxe are references to the story of Snow White, with the magic talking mirror and the 7 dwarfs that wield pickaxes. Red Cape references Little Red Riding's Hood. And lastly, Rosebud is the name of the sleeping princess in The Sleeping Beauty. The Ahizotl has 1 toy it spawns, the Ocarina. The ocarina is a real wind instrument and dates back to thousands of years ago. One culture that has made ocarinas is the Aztec civilization, which is where the ahizotl originates from. That dog can spawn 2 toys of doom and chaos. Pandora's box was a box from Greek mythology, which contained all the misery and evil. It was opened by the titular Pandora and unleashed chaos across the world. The other toy is the Evil Book, which spawns a great one that damages everything. This is a spoof of Cthulhu and other unknowable beings conceived by the incredibly racist author Lovecraft. Cthulhu is often portrayed as a giant green monster alien thing with tentacles coming out of its face. Since it was too unbalanced, the devs replaced the Great One in costumes with the small one, making a spoof of the spoof that is the Great One. And finally, we have the Questing Beasts King Toys, Excalibur and the Holy Grail. Both are key items in Arthurian legend, where the Questing Beast features in as well. Excalibur is the sword which Arthur the King held, and in some variations of the story, notably different from the sword he pulls from the stone to become king. Not in Super Auto Pets though. It is the only toy that has a duration of 30 whole turns, since you try to pull the sword from the stone to no avail. The Holy Grail is the big important relic that Arthur and his gang go to retrieve in many depictions of Arthur's story. This is also featured in the hit album High Noon Over Camelot by The Mechanisms. And that's it. Now you know about all the various Unicorn Pack Super Auto pets. I implore you to go and look at the sources list and research more about the pets or stories that were especially interesting to you. Special thanks to RevGT, who's currently drinking his favorite coffee and eating his favorite snack. This video took so much work, so please engage with it by liking, commenting, and if you enjoyed my ramblings, you can also subscribe for various content, SAP, and otherwise. Join the Discord for updates on when I upload or go live on Twitch for competitive sets or otherwise. I have a D&D campaign on my VODs channel, which you can go watch. Everything is linked in the description. And as always, thank you for everyone who watched, thank you for everyone who didn't watch, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye!